Welcome, Holly. Thank you for joining us. We should be getting started in the next few minutes.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Anthony Atkins with Higher Yields is on.
Thank you for joining us, Anthony.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we normally like to get started in just a few minutes. We're just giving everyone a chance to get connected.
All right. Awesome.
Hey, Trisha.
Hey, Corey.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing good.
Kay is actually our host. I'm not really here. I'm invisible.
Okay. Say, how's it going, Kay?
Oh, hello. It's going great. Thank you all for being here and agreeing to be our panelists today. We have just a few more minutes. I want to give all of the registered participants to actually get in the webinar, and then I'll give like a brief introduction and you guys can go crazy. It'll be your show.
Great. Anthony, you got the email with the deck?
Yeah, I do.
Great.
Okay. So we can get started now and then. So hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. We have Higher Yields Consulting with us. They are going to assist you by answering questions about what to do now that you have your conditional license. We do have a question and answer chat going. So any questions that you have, make sure you fill there first. They're going to be addressing those questions throughout this webinar session, which is scheduled from 6 until 8, but I left a little time after for you guys to ask more questions. And if there is enough time after you all get to present, then I'll let you guys come off of mute so you can ask those directly and kind of have a in-depth conversation as much as possible. What's available at the end. So I'll go ahead and mute now, and you guys can get started when you're ready, Higher Yields.
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. My name is Anthony Atkins. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer with Higher Yields Consulting. Really excited to have this opportunity that's been provided to us to share with you a little bit about us, how to continue the journey, if you will, in the social equity element of Illinois and the cannabis industry. And what we really want to be able to do is, of course, introduce ourselves. Myself, Chief Revenue Officer, Corey Wagner, our CEO, Jesse Larson, our Director of Design and Build Systems, and then Shannon Bustos, our Director of Growth Services. What we're going to be doing is taking you through a series of presentation deck, if you will. Each of us will cover a certain category. Definitely, if questions do come up, please, post them. And really excited about, again, not only the industry, but what's happening in Illinois and Chicago. So real quickly, I will introduce myself. I'm Anthony Atkins. I was actually originally born and raised in Chicago. So this is definitely near and dear to my heart. And, being from the magnificent city that it is. And so my background has 30 plus years in business development, strategic partnership development, channel development on a global scale, primarily in the telecom and technology industry prior to moving into the cannabis industry, joining Higher Yields Consulting. So very excited about what this industry has to offer. What I'd like to do is I'd like to pull up our presentation, and then we can move through and take you really through who Higher Yields is, what we do, and why we're different from that standpoint. So let's dive in. Who we are, why we do what we do, and of course, why we're different. Higher Yields Consulting is definitely a unique organization. We've been around for about 8 years. We have a deep history in the industry, as Corey will go into from that standpoint, but we consult and provide professional services throughout the entire supply chain and also the value chain from that standpoint. What we do is we really are that, we consider ourselves as that trusted advisor. We take that role very, very seriously. We provide insight. It's in-depth, it's comprehensive, and really allows to draw out the roadmap on your journey. And the HYC Readiness Playbook, as we're calling it for today's presentation, is understanding this. Your success is our success. We are not successful unless you're successful. Now that definitely takes on immediately a different play, a different position for us in the industry, because your interest is our interest, and we're in constant alignment with your vision and end goal, end game, if you will, and anticipated result. We're always in pursuit of helping our clients, our accounts achieve that operational excellence, which is not only financially, but in terms of the wealth of the excitement of the industry and seeing, dreams actually come true with, getting involved with the industry. We're operationally agnostic. And what that means is that we're always constantly serving your best interest. We're not an organization that has misintent, malintent. We're an organization that's completely focused on you. The development of business lifecycle roadmaps are also very important to understand, because roadmaps are important, because if you understand the business lifecycle in the cannabis industry, depending upon whether it's dispensary, whether it's vertically integrated, whether it's cultivation or craft grow, it's always understanding what that business lifecycle looks like and tying those budgets, tying those timeframes and timelines so that you really bring certainty to your project. Community focused, diamonds in your backyard is what I like to call it. Our communities are really what this is all about. And of course, Chicago, Illinois, those communities are prime and foremost on the forefront of everyone's mind of locking in, providing value, extending and exploring that value and support to those communities and the communities supporting your business. And then in addition, ecosystem development, which we'll get into towards the end of the presentation, and understanding and knowing the ecosystem that we bring to the table for you, from resources and those value-added resources that are so necessary. With this, as a result of that HYC Readiness Playbook, we're always looking at saving time. And of course, when you save time, you save money. We build professionally developed plans that are designed to match your vision, your budgets, timeframes, and of course, implementation. Risk mitigation, when we mitigate risk, it's all about increasing profitability, fiscal responsibility, and staying in compliance. Move on to the next slide. With our services, with our professional services, with our consultative services that we offer and we provide, we've really broken those down into 4 basic pillars of support. Number 1, that's startup systems. In the startup systems, now that you actually have gone through some of the application development side of things, it's all about the regulations and compliance. And really what it is it's taking and understanding and knowing those so you can take advantage of it. And when you stay in compliance, when we're abiding by those regulations and moving in that locked in, there's confidence in your operation. In addition to what the support that we provide, and in addition to the regulatory and compliant environments, is those business development environments and planning. From feasibility, development, understanding and knowing, hey, I want to go into this particular area. What is my financial model going to look like? What is my roadmap going to look like? How is the market assessing? So those feasibility, the business development aspects, business planning elements, some grant procurement environments to take advantage of what's been made available. And of course, planning is very important. So those startup systems is building that strong foundation for your business. Then we have design and build systems. This is taking a cultivation, a craft grow, a manufacturing environment, extraction environment, laboratory environment, dispensary environment, and taking it from concept all the way through operational excellence. And I always put operational excellence in there because that's where revenues are made, systems are explored, efficiencies are gained, and then of course profitability from that standpoint. And we act as those owners' representatives in the concept of design and build. So it's architects, engineers, it's mechanical systems, it's agricultural systems if needed, security systems. So we're really representing on that behalf and bringing our ecosystem, supplier vendor ecosystems to your operation. The third area is our marketing as a service, or what I like to refer to as our demand generation systems. This is very important to understand because as we know, gone are the days of kind of slapping that green cross on that plastic bag and saying, I have the best stuff. And brand development is key. Brand positioning, messaging, narratives, and building those marketing strategies and the systems around that brand, what you want to be known for. And when those brand guides come together and those marketing strategies are implemented, it's really creating a demand in the market, as opposed to an advertising model, which is more of a pushing motion or movement or strategy. We're talking about attraction, about intrigue, about creating that curiosity that moves people into embracing your brand and continuing to refer that brand because of their great experience. Our fourth area is our growth systems. This is where, of course, Shannon will be talking a little bit about the real estate as a service. Now, real estate as a service is is a great way to look at how to do this. Commercial cannabis real estate is very interesting. It's not like we're going to find, a deli, place to put a deli. It's a much more complicated environment. And we've built this real estate as a service group in order to be able to serve our clients in any way, shape, and possible of locking in and securing property. And then, of course, scaling and expansion, providing those services and having that continuity through the course of your product, very, very key. And then, of course, the ecosystem development from supplier vendors, product sourcing, and those sorts of things really bring economies of scale to your operation. Now, why higher yields, or why is higher yields different? This falls into three basic categories of why we're different in the marketplace and how we've really set ourselves apart to assist and support our clients' visions. Number one was we customize our approach. This is very important to understand, because we understand and know that our clients are their project, their vision is unique to them. And so we align with that uniqueness. We align with that development. We align with that vision. We know your project is special. Our approach is not templated. We work in a collaborative environment, because in a collaborative environment, you bring resources, you bring knowledge, you bring educating us. And as we're working to, of course, develop, innovate, and be creative, and always educating and helping our clients understand how to navigate this very complex and highly regulated industry. And then we really serve as the extension of your team. Being those trusted advisors is very important to us, and that we build that trust, we earn that trust, and stay aligned in that way. That's number one. Number two, we have been there and we have done that. And I think I can't remember the commercial, was it Farmers Insurance? We've seen some things. We've definitely seen some things. And by doing that, we bring a level of knowledge and expertise to your projects that really involve around understanding the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. And we base it on actual experience. We're not basing it on some element of theory or after watching a YouTube video and saying, hey, I'm an expert now. So we really bring that practicality, but we're always looking to innovate and bring that creativity to each and every project. And of course, continuity insights and efficiencies along the entire supply chain. Continuity is very key, because we have to see, and we're teaching and educating so that you can see through the process, so you can see to the end game and the end result. You can see your products being used and developed in the community, and the great experiences that people will have. So always have to have eyes on, all the way through that supply chain. And then, of course, business and budget roadmaps, constant evaluation and risk mitigation. Very important to understand. By building out those budgets, building out those roadmaps, bringing certainty to your projects is always key. And then number three is we break down our approach in phases. A phased approach is very important because it allows for sudden and variable change or development. A lot of times we may have to pivot from one area to a next because a municipality is having some roadblocks to certain properties or what have you. The industry adjuster changes, the state adjuster changes. So we're always allowing and building a phased approach so that we're not so far down the road, so far down the line that we actually, there's a lost investment. So we're always protecting investment and communicating and making changes and recommendations where needed, but also providing options from that standpoint. So when we break down in phases, we mitigate risk, we protect investment, right? And we're always preparing and allowing for sudden change. If we need to change, then that's where we can make those pivots. And then, of course, partnering for the long term. And so that's that kind of ends my side of the business of who we are, what we do, and why we do it, and why, of course, we're different. So feasibility and planning, strategy and execution, Higher Yields is really seeking to be your trusted partner in your journey. So let me now turn this over to Jesse Larson, our Director of Design and Build, or actually it's Shannon, right, Corey? We turn it over to Shannon. She's up next. Yes. Let me turn this over to Shannon Bustos, our Director of Growth Services, allow her to introduce herself and take us, continue on the process.
Thank you, Anthony. My name is Shannon Bustos. I'm the Director of Growth Services with Higher Yields. So that involves pretty much all things real estate. A little bit about my background. I've been in cannabis for about 11 years. I started out mostly on the retail side of an operation, which was extremely beneficial. I was able to see, kind of in that first emerging market here in Colorado, how do you deal with municipalities, ordinances, really an industry that's always changing. I have my broker's license here in the state of Colorado. I also partner with brokers throughout the US and will assist clients with finding cannabis commercial properties, selling them, pretty much everything in that realm. So this first slide, like Anthony had mentioned, commercial cannabis real estate is really quite different than traditional, and I wanted to kind of show and kind of lay out the difference. So your first part of, I guess, establishing a business and getting a property is figuring out the loan. So, in a traditional sense, you would go to your bank, you'd maybe try to get a small business loan, something of that source. Right now for cannabis, it's definitely different. Since we're not federally legal yet, we don't have the ability to go to banks or credit unions just yet. So mostly it's cash, private financing. There are some credit unions that are starting to, will lend to cannabis. And they're not, when we first started to see loans, they were like 24% interest. They've come down quite a bit from that. They're more in the realm of about 8 to 12% now. And then your second approach is to find the location. So in the traditional sense, you go and you try to find your best intersection. So, we don't really have that luxury with cannabis as well. So, really where you can find a location is dictated by the regulations, the market, which includes different zoning that the municipality has allowed cannabis to be into, and setbacks, and that is really dependent on whatever that municipality wants to implement. At that point, you would go into contract. So in your traditional sense, you go through underwriting, title, due diligence to your closing. With cannabis, you have all of that, but you might have a handful of hurdles within there. So things to be, I guess, cognizant about are different contingencies with your license. Some property owners, they might want some sort of hard earnest money, maybe a premium for a lease or the property, something like that. And also owners associations. So is it a shopping center that the property is in? Do they have, grandfathered in bylaws, or do they have new bylaws set that would prohibit any sort of cannabis use? So the way that we've seen a lot of clients first go is, you try to find a property on your own. So you're searching through the LoopNets or whatever it might be, and you'll say, okay, this property looks great, would be great for cannabis. And then you kind of backtrack and figure out, does the zoning work? Is there a school nearby or whatever it might be? Or you might get involved with a broker, and they might not have cannabis experience. So, they might not know, okay, I need to make, this contingent on the loan, or contingent on the license or something like that. So we've really taken a different approach, and we've used different sources of technology and data to assist in helping to identify green zone areas. So in the back area, you can see it's just a map with a whole bunch of circles. So essentially all those circles, and this is in Denver. So all these circles, they equal a setback that Denver has established. So a daycare, a rehab facility, a school, or another dispensary. So if it lands within a bubble, then you cannot have cannabis there. So you'll start to see, your areas kind of start to get dwindled down once you start to look fully at the map. So we essentially like to take the approach of, I guess you'd say, almost working backwards. So we would lay out to see where can these properties go, and then we go and we direct in where's the best traffic and what would be the most ideal in those green zone areas. As well, we like to be that kind of government liaison. So essentially, right, we want to figure out who in the municipality is the one who deals with most of the cannabis stuff. What type of things do we need on the government level to put into an application or whatever it might be, zoning checkoff or something like that. Sometimes they'll do preliminary proximity checks on a property. So really establishing that connection so that we could, have that benefit or figure that out a lot quicker for our clients. Efficiency and optimized time. So going this route, we've really seen the timeline sped up quite a bit. Instead of, if you, essentially, you kind of think about it, and if you throw a dart onto the dartboard, if you do that 100 times, well, you might hit 100 setbacks. But, being able to really take that approach and figuring out, different technology sources in the beginning have been really beneficial. And then contract assistance to protect your cannabis interest. So what we mean about that is really, taking what we have learned in a lot of these established places and making sure that we protect your cannabis interests. So if it might be a contingency in the contract or your lease to make it so, if you're not awarded the license, then you pull out of the deal, no strings attached, essentially. So, because the last thing you want to do, right, if you're paying a premium for a lease or a purchase, you don't want to get stuck with that property that has no business purpose for you. So that wraps up really my section. I'll pass it over to, I believe, Jesse.
Yep, awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. So my name is Jesse Larson. I'm the director of our design build department here at Higher Yields Consulting. I got into cannabis in late 2015 on the security side, before eventually moving on into design build for Higher Yields Consulting. And since then, have been able to design and consult on about 4.5 million square feet of retail, cultivation, extraction, manufacturing, and distribution locations internationally. Few things to really take into consideration when starting any type of construction project, whether that be in cannabis or just general construction. Next slide, please. Your team is going to kind of take a step back. The old adage is saying teamwork makes the dream work. It's very true when it comes to any type of commercial construction, whether that be in cannabis or just general construction industries. For any type of project that you'd be undertaking, you will need the same type of team setup as any other type of commercial construction project. Pretty much leading out with your project manager and delineating through there from everyone from quality control engineers, senior project engineers, planning, quality control, architectural, civil, all the way down to rough carpentry, plumbing, and electrical services. The individuals within these teams, while it is not while it is not sorry, While it's not imperative to have a complete understanding of everything going into one of these facilities, it does help to have some cannabis experience, especially when it comes to not only cultivation facilities, but extraction and manufacturing as well, is where we see a lot of the pitfalls on there. Next slide, please. And kind of bringing it in with the team created, you're going to want to as well start forming really good networks. One of the biggest things that we've seen here within cannabis over the last few years, the same as a lot of general commercial construction, is the need for supply chain resilience. Your vendors are going to make your life so much more easier when it comes to not only ordering equipment, but speccing out equipment, ensuring that a lot of this equipment is going to perform as advertised, as well as arrive on site on time, not be damaged, and be able to, again, perform as needed. Operators and trainers usually, as to kind of piggyback off of what Shannon and Anthony had previously said, having proper plans in place before taking on one of these projects is going to be imperative, but also the downfalls of not being able to fully finance one of these operations yourselves. Traditionally, what we've seen is a lot of smaller operators go to larger MSOs to help them either with their build out, some of their capital raising, some initial partnerships. What usually ends up happening there is the smaller guy gets hosed every time. And it's something that we really hate to see within the cannabis industry, because 95% of this industry is built on mom and pop locations, and everything 10 years ago was a basement grow. And so really being able to not only take your vision to the end, being able to see it from not only conceptual startups, but through operational excellence, as Anthony likes to say, and really be able to put your vision in motion and be able to have it operate effectively and in the way that you envision it, not only for your long-term goals, but remaining within state and eventually federal regulations and compliance, as well as, just having a very well-run and well-rounded business. It really starts out with that proper planning and preparation in the beginning. And so, to kind of circle it back in, your team is going to make your process either easier or harder. Having cannabis experience is not a complete necessity, but it is a very helpful benefit when it comes to not only your engineering and architecture, but your general contracting teams, and eventually your maintenance that will eventually be incorporated into these facilities. And so next slide, please. Likewise, this cost and timelines associated with building within cannabis. As I'm sure everybody is aware, there is some major supply chain issues happening internationally, not only within the US, but it is happening all over the world. With that, there are some rising costs, as well as increasing timelines. So being cognizant of that from the beginning is going to be imperative, that you get open on time, and kind of depending on what the local regulations are, there may be a certain amount of time you have to get operational from that time that you are awarded a conditional license. And so usually what we see right now as an average for dispensaries, your timeline is looking 3 to 4 months. Dispensaries are very simple. Your basic needs and necessities for compliance are mostly centered around security and storage, and which is leaving a lot of your internal operations to be able to be modeled off of other retail facilities rather effectively. Likewise, with that, initial capital expenses usually range between $100 to $200 per square foot. This is also dependent on what type of build out you're going to be doing. I've to piggyback again off of what Anthony said, you know, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Every type of dispensary you can think of, and the basic necessities are always going to be the same. And so knowing what you're going to be putting in there and what you're going to be getting out is going to be the most important thing there. Likewise with cultivation and manufacturing. These two areas are some of the fastest growing areas that we've started to see within cannabis. Cultivation, as always, is going to be a mainstay of the industry, and from everything that we've been experiencing right now, timelines and estimated capital expenses associated with cultivation facilities are about 6 to 18 months, depending on, again, what type of equipment you want to get in there, how well is it planned out, do we know when, where all of this equipment is going to be placed, how it's going to be used, and what our end goal is going to be. And likewise with cultivation facilities, you're looking at about $200 to $400 a square foot right now to build it out. 400, of course, being on the very high side with your automation and just really high-end equipment. Now manufacturing, usually our timelines are sitting at about 4 to 6 months. Capital expenses are $100 to $300 a square foot. Again, it really depends on what you want to put in there and what your end goal is going to be. Likewise with extraction, this extraction is one of the, behind cultivation and manufacturing, it's going to be one of the biggest pillars within cannabis. And so right now, our timelines, are sitting at about 6 to 12 months, depending on where the equipment is being manufactured and shipped in from. Likewise, the level of extraction that you're going to be doing will affect that timeline and the capital expenses. Currently, most extraction setups are sitting between $400 and $450 a square foot. While those numbers are generally higher than the rest of the other verticals within cannabis, it is a rapidly growing vertical, and it's something that you're not going to be using as much space as the other ones. So it does even out. And so with that, just kind of round it out again. I'm a very big fan of proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. And that's something that the cannabis industry really does pride itself on, as well as higher yields. So would really enjoyed being able to relay this and be able to hand it on over to Corey.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. And thanks for everyone's time today. My name is Corey Wagner. I'm the CEO and founder here at Higher Yields Consulting. We're located in downtown Denver, Colorado. My team members did a great job of providing a good overview of kind of what to expect in the industry, some of the pitfalls, and some of the why around Higher Yields Consulting and how we provide support and service to the industry. The thing that hasn't really been covered yet is kind of how Higher Yields came to be what it is today. Just kind of starting with myself, similar to Anthony, I was born and raised till I was about a teenager in Illinois, over on the west side in a small town called Sterling. But in 2000, or after when I became a teenager, we moved to Alabama, right, graduated high school and college at UAB. And in 2008, after graduation, I had started and operated a few small businesses, but wasn't really passionate about what I was doing. But had a lot of interest in the cannabis movement that I was seeing going on out west. And so in the summer of 08, made my way out to Northern California, where I cultivated and worked with other cultivators to bring them, really work to bring them together and create co-ops and educate them on the value of working together under one banner. And those co-ops were great because we were able to negotiate pricing on soil and nutrients, as well as, the education, kind of the cross education from the different growers. We were able to work on security together. We're also able to work together to legally protect and defend ourselves, which in 2008 in the Wild Wild West days was crucial, because we still had a lot of federal intervention. We still had very vague and ambiguous regulations. So in 2010, after a few brushes with the state of Colorado or California, as well as the DEA, decided to make my way to a more established regulated industry. The most progressive option at that time was Colorado. So in late 2010, I made my way to Colorado, opened up my first store in Denver. The next year, we opened up 2 grows, another store in Boulder. And at this time, there was only about 40 pages of regulations from the state. And while the Colorado industry appeared from the outside to be a very regulated, very structured industry, there were still a lot of gaps and things that hadn't really been thought through. So over the next 3 years of being the operator, the regulations went from about 40 pages to 300 pages. Today, the regulations are about 500 pages. And I can assure you I'm responsible for a lot of those additions due to me and my organizations really pushing back on the state and pushing the boundaries as far as we could to remain in compliance, but also interpret the law that didn't put us in a bad position. So, you know, back then and now things are a little bit more black and white. It's a little bit easier to understand what we can and can't do, but it seemed like almost everything at that time was gray. And it felt like our competition was more than just the retailers and the growers, but also the city, the county, the state, and even the federal government with 280E. Like everybody seemed to have their hands out and thought we were just making hand over fist. But in actuality, we were all learning a lot of really hard lessons, and we were pioneering this industry to get it to where it is today. So everything kept changing. Regulations were never pro-business, and the results from these changes, it was like operators were expected to snap their finger and make these changes, no matter how drastic they were, or how they affected our business model. So even with those changes, you know, we still had a lot of success with those businesses. And in 2013, I just decided to sell my business and really focus on providing support at a higher level to the industry that would have a bigger impact on how it was formed and how it was regulated. There were a lot of attorneys, CPAs, self-proclaimed experts at this time, but no one really had the hands-on practical experience that I had gained as an operator. And I realized at this time, no one really knew how hard it was to be an operator, but also that a lot of the operators were not prepared at this time because nobody had really ever been through this before. You know, in a lot of industries, you can kind of look in the rear view mirror and see 5, 10, 20, 30 years back, whereas cannabis, it was all new and it was all kind of, they were kind of making it up as we went along. So over the next 2 years, I worked with 2 different retailer and cultivation companies to help them implement in operational systems for the grows and then eventually operational system for their retail stores. And in 2015, both parties were able to sell their businesses to larger operators in the state, which was always their end goal. And both of them received an extremely high return on their investment. And so after this, I again had an opportunity to kind of reassess, you know, what I had learned in my first 7 years in the industry and to determine a direction forward to support the industry to the best of my ability. And that's when I decided to create Higher Yields, a vertically integrated firm that provides solution to all the problems this industry offers. And so in my 13 years and what my journeys look like, you know, we've completed over 500 applications. We've won competitive permits in 15 states. We've developed regulations for federal governments, state governments, local governments around the world. We've worked in 40 states, 25 countries. As Jesse mentioned, we've designed over 4 million square foot of facilities. And probably our greatest value to the industry is that we've seen so many of these businesses. We've worked with small conceptual startups all the way to large publicly traded multi-state operators. You know, so we've seen projects that were built on passion and small budgets, all the way up to, you know, some of these big guys with huge egos and huge checkbooks that, you know, don't really listen to anyone because they think they know better than everyone. But when it comes to social equity, we've been a part of the deployment and consulting on multiple programs around the US as well. It's really been one of the more frustrating things to be a part of because we don't see a lot of our input being taken into consideration with these state and local programs. And without that advice, we've seen a pretty high failure rate in these. And I think Illinois is a perfect example that, you know, just putting a piece of paper in someone's hands doesn't guarantee their success, right? There's a lot of things. There's capital, there's real estate, there's training, there's operations, there's compliance. There's so many things you have to do in this industry and so many hats you have to wear extremely well in order to be successful. And more so, these social equity programs are pitting you against, you know, $100 million, $200 million a year companies. It's very difficult to match pricing. It's very difficult to outmarket them. It's very difficult to outthink them. But that piece of paper is, however, with the right partners, with the right resources, a real opportunity if we can execute on it properly. The other frustrating thing about these programs is, a lot of states come out with the best intentions, but then it seems like they allow some of these MSOs to really take advantage of the social equity applicants with shady management agreements, lowball buyouts, and never allowing social equity applicants to own and run their own business and create the economic wealth for their communities that the programs are really intended to create. And I don't know about you guys, but seeing that and seeing people get picked on in this industry, it kind of pisses me off, and I hope it does you guys too, because that chip on your shoulder is what's really going to ignite a fire and be able to push you into this industry and give you the confidence that you need to be able to go and compete against some of these guys. But the bottom line is, social equity is something that we all really need to kind of rethink our approach to, and how we either consolidate our efforts and work to fight some of these giants, or to figure out how we're going to stand out a little bit better. So today, we're really here to kind of work together and change and start a movement that creates real opportunities. When I tell people about this industry and I talk about social equity program, the thing they always bring up is like, well, it sounds like David and Goliath, which in some ways is accurate, but it's also very not accurate. There isn't one Goliath out there. There's an abundance of them, right? And there isn't one David. There's an abundance of those as well, which is to your advantage. One of the problems with these programs is they've been developed. Programs that have been developed haven't worked to bring these groups together to fight on one united front. The program that we're starting to develop is exactly that. We have partners to help you find real estate, find capital, train you on how to operate these businesses. A program that takes the power away from the MSOs and gives it back to communities willing to work together for the mutual benefit of one another. And maybe part of me, it's ego. I take a lot of joy in really being able to stick it to these bigger guys, and I've taken pride in that for years. They underestimate you, they underestimate me, and it's unfortunate to see so many of them have the opportunity to benefit so greatly from this industry and take advantage rather than give back to those who actually started this legalization movement. So if you want to be part of the change and part of the movement that puts the power back in your hands and benefits your communities, definitely reach out to TREP School. Let them know you'd like to conduct your discovery call with Higher Yields for your roadmap development, which is what the state is offering our support to you. And if you're interested in taking it a step further and teaming up and really going out and hunting some of these giants with me and my team, just let us know you're ready for the movement. I really look forward to working with all of you guys and supporting you achieve your goals, and helping you guys become successful cannabis entrepreneurs. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Corey. That was awesome. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Alrighty, so I just updated the chat with 2 different links. So if you currently hold a conditional license for the Illinois cannabis industry, then you want to reach out to us via our individual consulting form. There's going to be a few different subjects you can let us know you need individual consulting about, and we would go from there to make sure you get matched up with who we have connections with in order to provide you those different services. So there is Higher Yield, who's with us right now, and also Illinois Equity Staffing to help with HR compliance, OSHA, and those type of topics. And then if you do not have a conditional license currently, then you want to reach out to us with the second link, which is the brief advising form. So normally, if you don't have your license yet, you may need to understand how to get started at pursuing a license. So you may not be aware of when an application process is actually open. We'd be able to provide you that information, let you know what steps it would take for you to get started, and then provide you assistance with, once you hear back from that application, if you had any deficiencies and all those type of things. So those are the 2 forms that you want to utilize to reach out to us. And then in the question and answer chat, so that one's been answered for you currently. It looks like some answers are coming through for the I have a question about cannabis building specifics as far as buildings for purchase being attached to others, fencing requirements, if any, and parking requirements. The city I have been approved for has a shortage of buildings. Zoning was all changed for us to come in. Oh, question's gone, so it's been answered.
Oh, sorry. Keep going, Kate. My bad.
Oh, no
Didn't
worries.
know I
You're
was going
fine.
to turn it off.
So the city, I've been approved. Zoning was all changed for us to come in, but I am having a hard time finding information about a few things. I've been awarded an infuser license. All right, Corey, did you want to answer that? And did you want me to go ahead and let everybody off mute?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because we have quite a bit of time, so that'd be awesome. But you can go ahead and answer that question and I'll get everybody off mute so that you can have a discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as the first question about social equity and your conditional license and the ability to receive some free individual consulting, just reach out to Trep School and Kay and Tricia will get you started through the process. And from there, we'll be introduced on a discovery call, and then we'll kind of dive into things and see how we can best help you. As far as the second question from Holly, building specifics as far as the building for purchase, we see this quite often. A city or county creates their green zones, and they don't do a good job of kind of checking their own work. And while they think they're doing good, they miss a pretty big piece of the puzzle. And what ends up happening is now we have to go back and kind of change that. A good solution, I think, for this one would be to do a ground up build. As Jesse kind of hit on a little bit, a retrofit versus a ground up build, there's pros and cons to each. A ground up build, it's going to take a little bit longer, especially with lead times and purchasing a building. There's a lot of site improvements that may have to be done, but with an infuser license, it's going to be a lot easier than a cultivation where we have to bring in 2,000-3,000 amps of power and upgrade transformers and those sort of things. An infuser license is actually a little bit one of the easier licenses to get to certificate of occupancy and get it set up. A retrofit, however, you really never know what you're going to get until you get into it. There's been a lot of buildings where we thought, this would be a really great option, but then we find out the water pressure isn't what we need it to be. Or for the type of use, we have to go through a whole different type of like rezoning or city planning to get it where it needs to be in order to move forward. Whereas with a ground up build, if they have the piece of property, if they have the land, and an infuser license not being like a retail license where, location, 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 with an infuser license, the cheaper the land, the better it is for you because it really pushes down your costs. Jesse, did you want to elaborate on that at all? I saw you were typing there.
No, you really hit it. One of the biggest things that you always want to make sure is that that building is suitable. Doing your due diligence on that building, making sure you're not either A, purchasing somebody else's problem, or two, walking in with your eyes closed. That's one of the biggest things one of the biggest pitfalls that I've seen people do over the years is get into a building without knowing actually what its bones are. And so that proper due diligence and really having your end goal likewise in mind is going to be the best thing. And likewise, to continue to piggyback off of what Corey said.
All right, so everyone else has been let off of mute. You can put your chat or your question in the question and answer or in the chat box, or you can come off mute and ask your question directly while we still have Higher Yields with us. Again, we appreciate it, guys.
Of course.
This is Tricia. While we're waiting for other questions, I just wanted to bring up something because it was mentioned, I can't remember which person from Higher Yields was presenting at the time, talking about funding. There is a loan program with DCEO that is available. And because we know that new licenses have recently gone out for craft grows, and we're expecting that more licenses might be coming out for craft grows in the near future, it's a reasonable expectation that DCEO will reopen the loan program. It's not open right now. I just double checked their website to make sure they hadn't snuck in and reopened it and not told us, but they haven't. But it is reasonable to expect that they will reopen it at some point in the future. And as soon as they do, if we hear anything, of course, as always, we will send out an email to let people know about the deadlines for the loan program and anything else that they put out. They're typically, when it comes to communication, at least with DCEO, since they are, the agency providing the technical assistance, they're pretty forthcoming with information. So, and we happen to be having a meeting with them next week. So it's on my mind to ask about the status of the loan program in that conversation to see if there will be a pending update, especially given that IDOA recently released those craft grow licenses.
While we're still waiting on more questions, I have a question for you guys. What do you see as kind of like the biggest area of opportunity for individuals entering the market when it comes to operational compliance? Like, what do you think that they need to watch out for as far as how frequently things change with the CRTA and especially when you're first getting started?
Sure. I think a good foundation, understanding, as you guys put together your applications, there's a lot of SOPs and operating plans and things like that you had to put together. And I'm sure at the time, we're putting those things together. People aren't really thinking about, they're just thinking about checking the boxes and getting the application in. But those are really great tools to be able to train, your staff on to get them caught up to speed. And while things do change, trying to be proactive about it and staying in the know with the state so you can make those changes before they're required and make those adjustments. Because sometimes even with some of those changes, sometimes you can kind of find an opportunity in them to stand out or to be a little bit different. But having a good foundation of that paperwork and then having a really good training program, as well as, potentially probably quarterly, if not monthly for the first few months, really just having somebody come in, an outside or a third party, and audit the processes to make sure that everything's being carried out and identifying anything that isn't, to go back and kind of retrain those things or make sure that employee competency is there on not just what we do, but how we do it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for that. We have another question. All right. Has Higher Yields worked directly with credit unions, banks, or REITSs that serve as lenders or structure real estate loans for operators?
Credit unions and banks, no. REITs, sort of. There are a lot of lenders out there right now. There's a lot more capital available now than there was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. There are some partners we have that, they'll find the property, they'll purchase the property, they'll build it out, and they'll lease it back to you. It can be a little bit more than that as far as like what you have to give up in order to get those opportunities. But it's kind of that give and take, if you guys are serious about getting in, because most capital partners, they're going to say, hey, you can have skin in the game as well. And some of that's going to be sweat equity. Some of it's going to be, your license. Some of it, hopefully is some sort of operational experience, or if you can put any capital into it just to show them that you are committed to it, it's going to make it a lot easier and probably keep more equity retained by you rather than a capital partner.
Thank you again, Corey. All right. Are there any more questions before we wrap up? Everybody can come off of mute. Got another question. This is Holly. So she's not able to come off of mute. The only person, I don't know why, but says, I'm not able to come off mute. We have located a building that was once a doctor's office, and it seems to have a great flow. We will not have the means to do a complete buildup as a very small family-based group. We are trying to start smaller and expand. I have just been having issues finding specific building requirements where I tend to find local regulations and state regulations flow together. The building we have found is attached to others, and I wasn't sure if that is allowed, as well as street parking being an only option. Also, I was not sure if the infuser must be fenced in the same as the craft grow needs to be from my understanding. I also am having trouble with what a secured locked facility would be. Our original building had a safe inside, so we knew we were in compliance. That building is now our smoke lounge. The new building would just have rooms. Does regulation desire a full safe area?
So just kind of starting from the top here. As far as, been having issues finding specific building regulations. A lot of the regulations are really just going to be more around like zoning and making sure it's zoned for, you can get a special use permit, it's zoned for retail, mixed use. As far as the building being attached, and you're not going to see, the state regulations. The other thing is going to be setbacks, and that's a big one that Shannon kind of hit on. Is just because it's a really great location, if it's not a certain distance away from a school, a church, a rehab facility, or the local government hasn't defined it as an opportunity zone for these types of businesses, then it probably won't work. A lot of times what you can do is just reach out to the city and ask them, hey, basically ask them to check it. We want to put in a cannabis business here. Will this work? If not, is there a way to work with the government to get it zoned properly? As far as it being attached to others, and wasn't sure if that's allowed. A lot of times you're going to have to, there's certain things you're going to have to abide by. The first is when you do something like that, if there's any sort of like, not necessarily a homeowners association, but like a commercial association that may tell you you can or cannot have that in there. So it just kind of adds another step to the process that you have to go through. Shannon and I are actually working on a project like that, similar here in Lakewood, Colorado, or in Denver, Colorado right now, to help them kind of get through it. And it's really the association that's kind of holding it up. We can't seem to get them to say yes or no. And it's kind of interesting because one of them is a Starbucks, one of them is a Taco Bell. Both of these businesses would be greatly benefited by having a dispensary right next to it. And then, one of the other things is like security. I know in a lot of states, and I'd have to go back and check to make sure Illinois is the same, but as far as like a fire exit, I know when we were working in New Jersey, there were a couple groups that had, these shopping centers where they had they were going to put a dispensary in there. And one of the requirements is that the fire exit or the hallway, any sort of shared hallway, is cut off so that it's only for the dispensary. That can be a really easy problem to solve, or they can be a very difficult problem to solve. It really just each project's a little different. As far as fencing off, I'm not sure about that one. We could certainly check into that one. And then as far as secured and locked facility, I would say it's always in your best interest to have a full safe area, especially as an infuser, all your product to be able to put it in one area and know that it's safe and secure. In Colorado, I'd say 9 out of 10 of these dispensaries and grows have all been broken into. Not that people have gotten away with a lot. A lot of times they do more damage to the building or the facility than they actually get away with. But the more layers of security you can put in place, cameras, other visual deterrents, sound alarms, safes, secure access doors, those sort of things, they're really just going to benefit you in the long term. And then zoning is all good to go on our building, and our mayor is 100% on board to make things happen, which is fantastic. That's great. Having a local government who's accepting you with open arms doesn't always happen. And when you have governments like that, though, they're going to make sure you get through your permitting, your inspections. They're going to get you a certificate of occupancy as soon as possible. They're going to pull the strings that you need, rather than a government that's on the fence or doesn't want you there. You kind of have your NIMBY, not in my backyard, person on city council or on planning, zoning, building department. So having the mayor have your back and really being able to kind of champion this project through the local government is great. And if it's zoned, if he says it's zoned where it needs to be, then that seems like a really good option.
All righty. So I'll be adding NIMBY to my cannabis jargon. That's a new one. And I appreciate you guys again. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Oh, I see a number 3. I appreciate you, Holly. Oh, that was thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
They are rock stars. Okay. Alrighty, so you guys can expect a survey from me. And then you also should expect a follow-up email, which will restate what I've already stated as far as where you can contact us if you have a conditional license and if you do not have a conditional license. Did anybody from Higher Yields want to add anything? It is your floor. I will be silent before we leave or end the webinar.
Yeah, just say, you guys have a really great opportunity. With Illinois being a limited license market, it makes it a lot more predictable, long term. We see in other markets like Oklahoma where you got less than 1 million people and you got 10,000 licenses. It's not a very good market to be in, and it's very hard to predict. With Illinois, there's a little bit more predictability, and if you can get these businesses up and operating, bringing that license, connecting it with real estate and getting it to cash flow, you have a very, very valuable asset that will probably pay dividends for years to come.
Yeah, very excited about the opportunity, of course, to hopefully work with one, if not all, and just continued excitement to advance the cause and the passion of the industry.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you for letting us speak. And it's always an exciting time to be in cannabis, and it's not going anywhere. And so it's definitely going to be a fun industry. So look forward to seeing all of you in it.
All right. I thank you all for coming out. It is a weekday, which is a work day. A lot of individuals obtaining licenses now still have a 9 to 5. So we appreciate you coming through to speak to us. Again, if you need individual consulting or brief advising from any of the companies that have been featured in these webinars, including the Trep School, and that's Higher Yields Consulting, also just give us a shout out through the brief advising form or the one-on-one individual consulting link. So thank you guys.
Yep.
Enjoy your Wednesday.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Trisha.